I wanted to remind you that a big part of your work for this course is going to be a series of short presentations about an environmental issue of interest to you and about a NGO, non-governmental organization typically. Well, that's what NGO does mean, but I've had students focus on a governmental organization, but I think the easier task is to focus on a nonprofit whose mission involves trying to correct a negative externality in the area of environmental economics. So some pollution problem. There's many to choose among. Anyway, what I want you to do is to pick a topic area. What's the environmental issue of interest? To pick an organization, a nonprofit whose mission, it might be a part of their mission, involves trying to correct that externality. And then your task is going to be to articulate the negative externality. What's the market failure? What costs are not being considered by producers and or consumers? What's the nature of the harm? To frame that in terms of our basic market failure related to externality model that I went over in class period 1. And then to assess what the many possible policies that an organization might pursue to try to mitigate this problem, what the range of possible actions are, and then evaluate what that organization's actions are with the range of possible actions in mind, and ideally to suggest to the board of directors of that organization what the organization might do more of and less of, or might do differently. Anyway, so be on the lookout. Your presentation next week will have you do various beginning elements of this task. And I'll collect presentation notes, and I'll collect presentation slides, and you'll give your presentation. I'm not having papers at this stage. Anyway, some days I read a paper, and just every article, not every article, but 6 or 7 articles jump out at me as being promising. The day I was going to talk about on class 2, I think, was from Wednesday, August 28th, New York Times. Front page, a flooded town versus a senator's lake house. This is a lake in Oklahoma where there's a lake. There's a wealthy community on a lake, and keeping the water high in the lake, it's a man-made reservoir, keeping the water high makes it better to boat on and recreate on, but the lake loses its ability to control floods. Well, here we are in this big flood year on the it's Grand Lake, and the Miami is the city. And what funny that they don't name the river. It's a front page article. I'll go back into the article and get the river. And it's funny they're really shy about naming the river. Anyway, it's a river. And, anyway, so this obviously the externality of keeping the water high for the boats is that the downstream communities get a higher chance of flooding. It's an externality issue, maybe not pollution exactly. Pollution might be easier. Anyway, as I go on, there's an article about Indonesia's citizens waiting for answers while oil coats their beach. There's a offshore oil well that's leaking and fouling 12 miles of shoreline that are ruining fishing, and I don't know how tourism is in that part of the world, but certainly there's a lot of negative externality problems there. Brazil rejects millions in aid for Amazon project pledged by leaders at G7. Okay, We talked about that. Second lung, quote unquote, in Africa is on fire too, so that deforestation and burning of the rainforests is very timely. I do want a diversity of topics. I guess I need to put a topic declaration forum up on Moodle so that you guys can take different topics there. Puerto Rico braces for possibility of a direct hit as storm shifts. There's many aspects of global warming. One that could make good topics. One is the increase in the severity of Atlantic hurricanes and the damage to surrounding communities. What else? I'm just thumbing through. I know there was a bunch of them. This is just, again, one day's paper. So be reading something. The Economist, the Oregonian's good for a lot. High Country News, I like. It focuses on Western state issues that get underreported elsewhere. A lot of environmental issues come up there. It's also sort of a little more, the ranchers and the farmers have a little bit louder voice in the High Country News, and that makes it a little more interesting sometimes than, say, the New York Times. It's very much an urban, has an urban set of reporters and a focus on urban issues. There's another article in here that is somewhat interesting, a loan tool that's yielding greener buildings. So there's this organization called Property Assessed Clean Energy, and I can't quite tell from the first couple paragraphs if it's an NGO or if it's a governmental organization. Anyway, the issue there is that there's this cheaper credit available for builders that develop green buildings or less energy intensive buildings. So there's obviously a market failure of energy being priced too low for the pollution, and there's a really interesting program. Again, it's this PACE, Property Assessed Clean Energy organization that's trying to fix that, trying to contribute to a solution to that problem in a fairly interesting way. So that would make a great paper. Just the High Country News issue that was nearby. Utah regulators gave the Mormon Church a pass on contaminated drinking water. So drinking water issues are key, whether they come from surface water or groundwater. There's different environmental issues depending on the nature of the water. There's an article on how the desert in New Mexico depends on these living microorganisms in the surface that have died for some reason, and the desert's suffering. Oh, it's the drought, again, somewhat related to climate change. There's sort of an interesting invasive species article. It's on the Olympic National Parks effort to remove the mountain goats that have become quite a pest. The Olympics don't have a natural source of salt, and these mountain goats, I've run into them in the Olympics and in Glacier. And when the Olympics, they come right up to humans in a way they don't do in Glacier. And apparently the reason is this lack of natural sources of salt. So humans, of course, when you're backpacking, you just pee on the ground, right? Well, the goats want the salt, and they'll come and just eat the ground where you peed. And oftentimes they'll come and eat the ground where you peed, right near where humans are. And mountain goats are pretty dangerous and pretty bad tempered. And there's been a lot of negative human mountain goat interaction, so they're flying them out. I think there was a hiker killed a year or two ago. Anyway, there's tons and tons of issues to choose from. Pick something that's interesting to you. Pick an organization that's trying to do something. Could they be doing better by refocusing their efforts? Describe that. If they're doing the best possible, well, okay, make that case. Anyway, should be interesting to you and to all of us.